Hello, I'd like to talk to you about vendor risk management, one of the 4 applications illustrated here. It begins with internally tiering your vendors to determine the type and frequency of risk assessments to distribute. Findings are generated, issues are created, and unsatisfactory questionnaires are returned to the vendor for remediation. This cycle continues until the assessment is closed. At that time, a risk score is generated for reporting purposes. With continuous monitoring, you can stay on top of changes, increase performance, and ultimately protect your company from unnecessary risks. Let's jump ahead to what your vendors see. This is the vendor portal, where we take you out of email and consolidate all communication and collaboration. Vendors can manage their teams and address issues all in one place. Now let's go back and talk about how we got here. The Dynamic Risk Dashboard is the best place to get an overview of your vendor risk program. Dashboards show you the state of the vendors you do business with. Easily see which vendors are processing assessments, the risk across your vendor ecosystem, and much more. View the status of vendor issues and get visibility into your assessment plans so you can proactively plan for upcoming workloads. Continuously monitor using security score ratings to help detect risks in the vendor ecosystem, then assess, mitigate, and remediate them, all in one platform. Note the 3 vendors with past tiering assessments and the 2 vendors with a moderate risk rating. Dashboards are customized to show any information available in the platform, making them perfect for communicating compliance or providing status to other departments and upper management. Reports can be scheduled or run on demand. Let's click on Vendors and select Work Faster from our vendor catalog to look at the vendor record. With out-of-the-box capabilities, you can easily import vendors into this list or integrate with vendor management systems. You can see the standard information on this vendor record. This is an active vendor, the risk rating is low, the risk tier is tactical supplier, and the vendor tier has not yet been calculated. You can also identify your vendor managers and business owners. You can see the vendor contacts, which the vendor can modify via the portal. If you've used ServiceNow IT Operations Management for service mapping or asset discovery to add vendor information into the Now platform CMDB, those vendor services automatically populate along with the business owners. It's a best practice to assess your vendors on a regular basis. Automating it here in repeating assessments helps achieve that. If you're using the GRC module, vendor controls could be mapped to a questionnaire response. For example, if the vendor answers no to multi-factor authentication, this control would fail and you would see their non-compliance on the policy dashboard. Risks could be generated based on this failure, such as the risk of the vendor exposing sensitive information because of the lack of security. Other risks could be the vendor being unable to deliver high-quality services, impacting the business. The ability to automate cross-functional GRC processes based on vendor issues and real-time changes in your vendor risk posture allows you to more quickly identify and respond to risks. Now let's select all tiering assessments. Adam has assigned this to himself as a vendor risk manager, selected the vendor, Work Faster, and given it a name. You'll notice the vendor tier is blank. Also, he's selected the assessors. Barbara is a contract manager, and Abel is a risk manager. He's already added the basic tiering questionnaire template. This is provided with the product. If he had more questionnaires or document request templates, he could add them also. Once the tiering assessment is complete, Adam can manually send the appropriate vendor risk assessment out to Work Faster, or he could automate sending the vendor risk assessment using submission rules. Selecting tier-based submission, you can see the various rules previously set up. Looking at the high submission rule, you can see that when the vendor gets assigned high, the high-risk vendor risk assessment template will be used. By checking the box Auto Submit to Vendor, Adam can automate the process of submitting the risk assessment to the vendor as soon as the assessment is closed. Let's take a quick look at the basic tiering questionnaire template. It has 3 different sections. For the purpose of the demo, the contract manager role has been assigned to the first section. The second section has no roles assigned, so anyone can answer the questions. And the risk manager is assigned to the third section. Let's submit this tiering assessment for completion by the tiering assessors, Abel and Barbara. You can see the message on the top of the screen that shows the Turing questionnaire has been sent. Let's log in as Barbara. When she selects My Assessment and Surveys, she can see the assessment that was just sent. Because she is the contract manager, she sees the first section from the questionnaire that was assigned to her specifically, and the second section that did not have any roles assigned, so she will complete that also. Questionnaires for GRC assessments are built using the drag and drop survey designer. Drop-down lists can have customized response options, and you can create dependent questions visible based on the answer to a previous question. We filled this out as if this were a strategic vendor that has access to sensitive information. Now let's log in as Abel, who is the risk manager, and open the same assessment. In the questionnaire, he also sees the common section that had no roles assigned to it, and he sees the third section that was specifically assigned to him. Again, we filled this out as if this were a strategic vendor that requires us to satisfy many federal, industry, and regionally specific regulations. Let's log back in as Adam, the vendor risk manager, and review the responses from Abel and Barbara. You can see the vendor tier is now set to high. The assessment instances each show a score of 70, which also averages out to 70. This falls in the high tier range. Remember, this is not the actual risk posed by the vendor. It is the tier the vendor is placed in, based on access to sensitive information or importance to the business. Adam can edit the ranges to meet his organizational guidelines, and he can have a different scale for each assessment. Because of the tier-based submission rule, when we go back and close out the tiering assessment, the high-risk vendor risk assessment will go out to the vendor. You can see the message at the top of the screen. The dashboard now shows there are 4 vendors that have performed tiering assessments and 2 vendors that are currently performing a risk assessment, one of which is based on the tiering assessment. Let's bring up the vendor portal. The vendor portal now shows a new assessment that was automatically generated based on a tiering change. In this case, an initial tiering. We've embedded and licensed the entire SIG questionnaire and made it backwards compatible. By the message at the top of the screen, Work Faster entered a previous version. The import parses the entire spreadsheet and fills in all of the questions. You can see the additional questions that were added in the latest version. This increases accuracy and improves efficiency. We're going to select No for questions 71 and 72. Those should really be answered yes. Going to the SOC 1 document request, we are going to select No. Again, this should be yes. The status bars show you how far your team has gotten in addressing the various questionnaires and document templates. The vendor can manage his own team. Alex, as the primary vendor contact, can assign additional Work Faster personnel to complete the various portions of the assessment. Standard vendor contacts can only assess items they are assigned. By assigning multiple people to a section, it allows the functional groups to better collaborate. Let's attach the SOC 2 report and submit the assessment. If Alex hasn't completed the assessment, he must confirm his intention to submit. To set expectations, note the expected response date under the assurance that the assessment has been submitted. Bringing up Adam's customer view, you can see by the numbers reverting back to 0 and 1 that the risk assessment has been submitted. If we drill back down into the automated assessment for Work Faster, you can see the risk rating is set to high. Adam can easily view the progress of Work Faster. Even before they submit the response, this will show % complete, taking the guesswork out of how far along the vendor is in the assessment. Automatic reminders are sent when the deadline is approaching. Automated scoring of assessment responses use the robust hierarchical weighted scoring framework that is fully configurable if Adam drilled into the questionnaire. Let's select the SIG Lite questionnaire. During the review, Adam can filter responses to focus where action is needed and flag questions for follow-up. Adding internal and external comments for the vendor help reduce the back and forth necessary with email. Anyone wanting to see status can filter using the Show Follow-up checkbox to see just those checked questions. By checking the Include this question when creating an issue box, Adam can easily consolidate many questions under one issue. Use the Create Issue button at the top to manually generate an issue. Because we have questions that still must be addressed, Adam is going to return this questionnaire to the vendor after adding a comment to help clarify and speed response. Adam can see the questionnaire marked as returned. Issues can also be generated automatically based on an insufficient or incorrect response. Let's click on Issue Generation Rules. Adam is going to modify an existing rule. He wants an issue generated if the SOC 1 report was not provided by the vendor. If this questionnaire template had multiple questions and he wanted an issue created if any of them were a problem, he could select all the questions at this time. Now let's go back to the assessment. By selecting Generate Observations, the system invokes the issue generation rules, and you can see here generates an issue. We know it's based on the lack of a SOC 1 report. The high-risk rating seen above was due to the high risk calculated for the SOC 1 document request, essentially the lack of a report. Adam is going to create a task before he reviews and submits the issues to the vendor. Once submitted, the vendor will see this on his portal. Issues and tasks are created in real time before the assessment is closed. We're marking these with the recommendation of vendor to remediate. If we were to mark it as accept, the assumption is we would be creating an exception for this noncompliance. Controls that are accepted remain in a noncompliant state until the control is reassessed. In this way, the issue can be used to document observations during audits. Here you can see the two questions from the SIG Lite Adam selected when he created the issue. Finally, Adam now returns the SOC 1 document request to work faster. On the vendor portal, Alex will update question number 71 on the SIG Lite. He doesn't need to address every question to resubmit. Under Issues, you can see the real-time communication stream used to communicate between the vendor risk manager and the vendor to achieve closure on noncompliance. This message that Alex just typed will already be visible for Adam to see in his view. You can see the message that Adam sent to Alex under Tasks. Alex could respond if he needed clarification. Let's go add the SOC 1 report. Once saved, you can see on the portal the progress has changed. Now Alex can resubmit. Back in Adam's view, Adam can see that the vendor has responded with their SOC 1 report and the risk rating has gone down to just moderate. He can look under Issues to see the communication thread. Adam can add work notes to himself or make comments visible to Alex and work faster. Back on the vendor portal, Alex can see Adam's response to his questions. This will continue until Adam finalizes with the vendor and closes the assessment. Now that we've gone through the process, you can see the life cycle, and we show one additional vendor in the moderate risk range. Alex sees the assessment has been closed. Accurately tiering, continuously monitoring, and properly assessing your vendors reduces your risk of a breach or non-compliance. If you'd like to learn more, please visit the product page on ServiceNow.com.